mind because I was, let me see, in my personal, I was Catholic until I was about 19.
Okay.
I was sort of, generic Christian for a couple of years after that. Then I left the whole Christianity thing. I still believed in God for a while.
Okay.
Like I was a deist for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually eventually came to the conclusion, like, look, if I'm going to be intellectually honest with myself, the reason I'm believing this is not because I have good evidence for it, it's because I want it to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen people make some very bad decisions that have cost other people their lives because they believe something that they wanted to be true rather than what the evidence supported.
Okay, yeah, and also I believe I also believe that same thing because I currently live in a Christian environment, but they tell me to never ponder why I believe what I believe or to examine what other people believe. And I grew up a Christian until I finally realized it wasn't for me. I didn't really have any good evidence to believe in that before I converted to Islam, which I found it resonated with me the most. And just wow, look how convincing it is. And I live in an Orthodox Christian area, and they're like, do not, they're basically telling me to shut my mind to evidence, which that's one thing that pushed me away from that.
Yeah.
And as soon as you believe, you're in the realm of mental capacity, which can't, it takes you out of the experience. Like all the prophets or whatever, Christ, they didn't have a religion, they had an experience. And if anybody believes that, it's energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed, so that's not that the mind can't wrap itself around it.
Although I think it was my brother at one point who asked me, like, what do you think happens? What do you think happens to your energy when you die? And I went on to explain to him that it gets spent. All the energy in my body gets spent on the chemical processes that it was going to do. My heat, electrical energy, since I'm, like what happens after you die? Well, I'm not taking in any new material to catalyze, so I'm not producing any new energy.
Okay.
All the energy that's in there is going to get spent on whatever it was going for.
Gotcha.
Chemical processes and whatnot. The electrical energy of my nervous system will dissipate. And likewise, my heat energy will also dissipate until my body reaches a state of thermodynamic equilibrium with the rest of the environment, which is a state that we colloquially know as dead.
Yeah, and so I believe that there is more to life than just mere atoms and protons, because there is like I would like to believe that. Okay.
Until I see solid evidence for that, I am withholding judgment.
So that's another thing, because I do believe that in rational conclusions, but not necessarily everything can be proven through the scientific method.
I would beg to differ. And
I was going to say that simply because we can't empirically prove something in a science lab does not automatically make it fake. I mean, there's various other forms of knowledge.
It doesn't make it fake.
Right.
It doesn't make it fake necessarily.
Yes.
But we should hold off on believing it's true until we have evidence.
But what about
there are some things we can definitely show to be fake.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's philosophy, we got historical testimony, and there's various other stuff that we have not been able to actually take to a science lab. But I haven't necessarily seen anybody referring to it as objectively fake. That's what I'm getting at.
The things I would say are objectively fake are things that we can prove to be fake, as in we can test them and they fail.
Right.
Now there are things that we can't really test. I'm not going to call them fake, but I'm not going to believe that they're true either.
Well, see, that's the thing. I do believe that it's possible to come to a keyword rational conclusion without necessarily winning a Nobel Prize in science for your contention, because, like, for example, we can't 100% verify love itself in a science lab. I mean, we can measure aspects of it. Hold on.
I was going to say I've had people tell me that before. Like, you can't show me that love exists.
Love itself.
And I told them, you know what? You put someone in an MRI, and I can not only show you that love exists, I can quantify it.
Well, see, we can measure aspects of love for one thing. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, aspects of love can be measured, because, like, I've seen, like, oh, this is what happens to you when you think about this sort of thing, or that's just something that describes it.
I mean, I would say, I would say we can also gauge it by someone's behavior.
So I would say that love is something that's been debated by both philosophers and scientists alike. I mean, like, the stuff you mentioned to me are just, these are like adjectives to describe what it is, but that doesn't necessarily empirically verify the property itself.
I mean, love is a feeling; it's an emotion.
I would say there's a little bit more to it than just that. I mean, it can also come in many different definitions, and yeah, that's what I gotta say about that.
Well, I know I have done this sort of experiment with two people that I can think of, and they both reacted in very, very different ways. The second time, I think it was a little bit my fault, because both of them tried to tell me that God loves me, and my response to both of that, I was like, okay, this is actually testable. Let's actually evaluate God's behavior towards me and see if that would match up with what we call love.
Yeah.
And I said, as an example, I can prove that my wife loves me. First of all, I can show that she exists.
Okay.
There.
Okay.
And second, we can examine her behavior towards me and see that it matches up with that.
But
Now, the next thing I asked this guy was, "Do you love your daughter?" And he ended the conversation right there, because I think he knew where I was going to go with it, because I was going to question the whole doctrine of hell. Basically, like, if you love your daughter, is there anything she could do that would make you, lock her in a basement and torture her for all eternity? Because that's where I was going to go with it. But I think he knew that. He ended the conversation right there. The second guy was much more dishonest, and his answer to me was, well, think of all the sins you've committed in your life, and God hasn't killed you for any of that. And I just told, my response to that was like, that's your standard for love? God, it's like, God, I hope you never end up on a jury in a domestic violence trial. Because at that point it's like, well, we beat the shit out of her, but she's still alive. He obviously loves her.
I mean, I would say that simply because I can't empirically in a science lab verify that my own wife loves me does not mean like that it's fake. And also, like, I can't like get into somebody's thoughts and take those to a lab.
No. Yeah, you can't. Yeah. Well, again, I mean, MRI, we can see some of that, but otherwise, you can evaluate her behavior towards you.
Yeah, I would say behavior is more of an aspect as opposed to what it is itself.
Well, the other thing I have, and this is why I'm such an advocate of science and rationality.
Okay.
Is people believe all sorts of things,
right?
And our beliefs don't live in a vacuum.
Of course.
We make decisions based on the things we believe,
right?
And when it comes to stuff like that, if you're believing something that's wrong, you're probably going to make bad decisions. But again, if you can, it just in evaluating your wife's behavior towards you, you can take that as an example of what she believes. If she's going off, if her beliefs are, that beliefs influence someone's behavior,
right?
If she loves you, that is going to show in her behavior.
But just because she might do some of these things does not 100% verify that she does actually love you. That's another thing to consider.
Yeah, but again, just we're going off the best evidence that we have.
But let's not forget that, like, sometimes, like, since like we are like limited beings, we can make mistakes. Let's not forget that.
Yep.
And so I guess my contention is that science is one of many forms of knowledge.
Well, science is also a when you mention that we're limited and we make mistakes. The really good thing about science is that it's a self-correcting system.
Well, I mean, like, let's not forget, even the scientists can make mistakes. Remember that.
Yeah, and again, this is why when I said the science is a self-correcting system. Okay, I'll give you a really good example of how that kind of thing works.
Okay.
A lot of the anti-vax paranoia right now.
Okay.
That started in, I think it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
It was a British doctor named Andrew Wakefield.
Wait, I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about how he contended that vaccines cause autism.
I'm talking. Well, yeah, yes, he did that, and he got his study published in the British medical journal, The Lancet.
Right.
And that's how this panic first got started, because this was seemingly legitimate research.
Okay.
The board of peer reviewers of The Lancet looked at his study. They looked at his experimental design, his methodology. It's like, okay, this all looks good.
Okay.
This all looks good. We can't really find any fault in it.
Mm-hmm.
So then it went to publication. Now, there were a bunch of other doctors all over the UK who read that study and went, that doesn't, those numbers don't seem to match up with, what my experience is.
Right.
And because publishing in peer review, you have to publish your methodology, like exactly how you did your experiment step by step.
Right.
So they were able to go back and recreate his experiment.
Okay.
Do everything he did step by step.
Okay.
And they got radically different numbers.
Okay.
They got numbers that showed no connection whatsoever to vaccines and autism. So, and they published their studies in The Lancet, and because of that, the medical journal retracted the Andrew Wakefield study.
Mm-hmm.
It was initially it was like, okay, this doctor made a mistake, and we caught it.
Right.
There was some investigative journalism that went into that afterwards, and he didn't just make a mistake. He falsified his research. He committed fraud.
Yes.
But just that process, again, that is how science is a self-correcting system.
Right.
Because any study that someone publishes, any other scientist in the field can go back and redo that study and check that person's work.
Right. And also, I do contend that science gives us what and how, but I don't think it necessarily can 100% accurately give us the why to many different things.
If you're talking about a greater purpose to all of this, no, it can't.
Well, yes, yeah, that's another thing. And so that's why we have thousands of years of philosophical discussions and debates, and I haven't actually seen anybody call that I haven't seen anybody call that a clown fest or nonsense.
No.
So I do contend that science is merely one of many fields of knowledge that we engage in every day, and nobody has been called irrational because of any of that.
Well, and I don't know. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with philosophy, because I have seen philosophy be used by especially young Earth creationists, people who are very religious. They use philosophy in lieu of actually providing evidence. But philosophy is valuable in that it can introduce you to new ways of thinking about things.
Well, sure. And also, another comparison I could make is that let's say we got I have my phone here, so let's say we have the actual web and everything else, but we have what it is, but computer technology can study sort of why all that stuff happens. So they're just pretty much two different things. And I would say that simply because we can't use a scientific method for some stuff, I don't see anybody jumping to the conclusion automatically that it's 100% fake. I haven't seen anybody doing that.
Again, they're okay. If you want to make the assertion that there is a God that created the universe,
right?
I'm not going to call that fake right off the bat, because okay, let's say going back to I used to be a deist,
right?
That concept of God was something that you really couldn't empirically test,
right?
Because that was the idea that God created the universe, set down the laws of physics, and then pretty much just sat back and watched this experiment unfold. Didn't really interfere after that, so there would be no way to test or detect God after the creation event. But at the same time, positive claims require positive evidence,
Right.
and to assert that there is a God and then not provide any evidence, that's one of those things where like I would call the assertion bullshit at that point, because not because it's necessarily false, but because the person making the assertion has no evidence to bear. They have no way to say if it's true.
Well, which is why I believe that there's also many different definitions, I guess, to evidence, because it can come in many different shapes and appearances. Let's not forget that.
Well, the one that I go with, the best one is that evidence is data that goes to support exclusively one conclusion that goes to support one conclusion to the exclusion of others. So like, okay, like when I ask believers for evidence of God, and they go, well, I mean, look at the universe. That's not evidence. You're showing me the universe exists.
Right.
Now, showing me that it exists does not necessarily indicate the cause for that existence.
Well, I mean, so
because just saying, hey, the universe exists. Well, I mean, that doesn't say anything about how it got here. Like, that person saying there is a God as evidenced by the universe existing, and there could be someone else saying that there are magical space pixies on acid that created all this as evidence by the universe existing.
Yeah. Well,
so just that is not evidence.
Well, I would say that again. So we have the what, we have, I guess we have the how, but what we need to understand is there must be a why for why literally anything is in place in general.
Says what?
So you don't believe that there's a why at all?
I don't think there has to be a why. I don't think that's a given. That's not a brute fact that we have to accept.
Well, I would say that there existing a why serves as I guess you could say plausible, because I guess if you,
it might serve to give you some comfort, but I don't think there's any reason.
I would say that there's a little bit more to it than just mere comfort, because even like there's a whole bunch of comforting beliefs that a person could have, yet they could falter in that, and like it can be like
there are lots of false beliefs people have that they never falter in. The faltering isn't evidence of veracity.
Well, the other thing that I would go to is, once again, trying to be a good scientist means withholding judgment at a certain point. Like if we're just talking like cause and effect and the laws of physics and everything, we could take why all the way back to the Big Bang.
right.
Now there is the question of what came before the Big Bang, which is kind of a mind bender when you consider that time also started with the Big Bang, and you go back before that, there essentially is no time, and that's hard to wrap your head around. But there's a period of time called the Planck time, which is like a fraction of a second, between like when the Big Bang happened and everything else
Right.
that happened after that. No one knows what happened during or before the Planck time. The laws of physics essentially break down, and if you're talking about why is in cause and effect,
Right.
our knowledge ends there. Our knowledge ends there, and to be intellectually honest, if I were to be asked like what happened before that, what happened during that, I have to say I don't know. And there's a point where, again, to be intellectually honest, we have to get comfortable with saying I don't know, and that's something humans are not good at.
And well, let's not forget that there are times, for example, that being 100% ignorant of something is also not good either.
Well, yeah, and again, not saying that we're 100% ignorant, but as far as like having all the answers at that point, it is better to say I don't know than to make something up and assert that is the truth.
Yeah. And also, I would say, let's say that we have like some type of let's say we have like a big like map that leads us somewhere. And let's say let's say like the map is sort of like it explains how what they're trying to find, and so there has to be like a why for what they're looking for. And also, I would say that if at one point or another, like we found like a mistake in the direction, I would not say that the map itself is the entire whole map is false. I would say that just that one part.
Yep.
And I would say that I contend that that we need to. So there needs to be a what and what, how, and why.
And actually, I've got another really good science story with that thing. The whole finding a mistake in one part of the thing.
Yeah.
For a very long time, it was sort of commonly assumed among scientists like biologists, paleontologists.
Mm-hmm.
It was commonly assumed that lungs evolved before legs.
Right.
That that fish developed the ability to breathe before they developed the ability to walk.
Okay.
Well, when we finally found that transitional species going from fish to four-legged land animals.
Right.
We finally found it. It was called Tiktaalik. Only when we found it, there was something about it we absolutely did not expect. This thing could not breathe air.
Okay.
This is a fish with legs. It had legs with toes, but it had gills. It was not an air breather.
Okay.
So that doesn't mean that the entirety of evolutionary theory was wrong, because we still found this clearly transitional form exactly where the theory predicted we would find it.
Yeah.
But that one aspect of thinking that lungs came before legs, that was wrong. That raised another question. Why did this thing have legs? Like, what advantage would it give? What advantage would it give this fish to have legs? Like,
right.
What sort of environment was it living in that legs would be advantageous?
Okay.
I did this at Penn State before in front of a crowd of students, and one brilliant kid just asked me, "Did it live in a swamp?" When they looked at the environment it lived in, like the paleontology, the impression of the plants and everything,
right,
that is exactly what they found.
Oh, okay. And so I would say that I disagree with Darwinian macro naturalist evolution, but I do believe in adaptation. I do believe in that. We can't escape from that.
What is the difference there?
Well, I mean, adaptation is like a creature can get used to its environment. Is that what it is?
No, that's acclimatization. If we're talking evolution, we're talking genetics. We're talking heritable mutations.
Yeah, I would say that. So, Darwin wasn't trying to answer questions like how we got here or what's good and bad.
If you want to talk about evolution, I mean, Darwin might be if you want to learn about it, Darwin might be a good place to start.
Well,
but Darwin also got a lot of stuff wrong. What we know about evolution did not begin and end with Darwin.
Yeah.
It started there.
Yeah.
It started it, but among other things, Darwin had an idea of group selection that turned out to be wrong.
Okay.
But again, any of Darwin's ideas,
okay, had to be put
to testing.
Right.
Well, for example, one of the things that Darwin was very, very right about, he was one of the earliest advocates of the idea that birds are modern day descendants of dinosaurs. I would go one step further. I'm saying that birds are dinosaurs, they're not just descended from them. But Darwin said that if that idea was correct, we should eventually find something that was transitional between theropod dinosaurs and birds.
Right.
We should essentially find a feathered creature that had a mix of traits of both species. Specifically, it said unfused wing fingers.
Okay.
The very next year after he said that, they found Archaeopteryx,
right,
which is exactly what he predicted.
Right. So I guess adaptations refer. I think that's microevolution. So I agree with that.
Okay. Microevolution is evolution, or genetic change, genetic variation within a species. Macroevolution is when you see the emergence of a new species.
Right.
And we've seen that. we've actually seen that in the laboratory. You know how they do all those genetic experiments with fruit flies?
I believe so.
Yeah. Well, after decades and decades, because if you have a population of fruit flies in the lab, you don't need to go out and get new ones. You can just breed the ones you have in the lab. After decades and decades of being isolated, those laboratory fruit flies cannot interbreed with wild fruit flies anymore. They are a new species. That's macroevolution.
Yeah, and so I guess I have really no choice but to accept adaptation, because that's pretty easy to be seen, because we've seen for example there's an animal that once upon a time was not suited to an environment, and now all of a sudden it is. I mean, anyone can agree with that.
The other thing you have to understand about evolution: individuals do not evolve.
Right.
Individuals don't evolve. Populations evolve. The way evolution happens is there is a mutation in the genes of the reproductive material.
Right.
So the offspring inherit whatever this mutation, this new trait would be.
Well, I would say that it's certainly possible to accept evolution as a process, but it's not accurate to say that that's the answer to the beginning of everything.
No, it's not that either.
Yeah.
Because it would be helpful if you really understood exactly what evolution is. The textbook definition of it is evolution is the change in allelic frequencies in a breeding population over time.
Okay.
Alleles are variations of a gene.
Okay.
Say, I'm really oversimplifying this, but let's say eye color.
Okay.
Now, there's something like 30 genes that go into determining eye color, but for the sake of argument, let's say there's just one.
Okay.
The variant of that gene for brown eyes would be an allele, blue eyes would be an allele, green eyes would be an allele. It's all the same gene, but it's just a different version of that gene.
Okay.
And actually, if we're talking the whole thing going from dinosaurs to birds,
okay,
it is the same gene that codes for feathers as codes for scales.
Right.
Feathers are basically a modified scale.
Okay.
But yet, evolution does not deal with the origin of life.
Right.
That is outside its scope.
Right.
That's something different. That's called abiogenesis. Evolution is basically what happened to life once it was here.
Actually, I wouldn't even think I agree with abiogenesis either, because I would say it doesn't matter what scientific route you go down. I contend that there must, at the end of the day, be a why for any of it happened at all.
Abiogenesis right now is not a coherent theory because we haven't answered that question.
Okay.
We haven't answered that question of how did the first life form.
Okay.
But it's a field of study in that we have people researching that and testing various hypotheses and trying to find the
Yeah, but I guess at the end of the day, my contention is that simply because we can't verify something 100% in a laboratory does not mean that we're going to call that person that believes in it a fool and be like, no, that's fake. I mean, because based on everything I've been saying.
Well, I'll call again. I will call. I'll call it fake if it goes against evidence. If it's something that's simply untestable, that's something that we don't know whether or not it's true.
Okay.
But if you take the idea of the Noachian flood from Genesis,
okay,
that is fake. That is fake because we can test that in many ways and show that it is definitely not true. Among other things, if you're talking, if you're contending that there was that the entire Earth was flooded, well, we know what, if you look at geology, we know what floods look like. We know what large floods look like. We even know what mega floods look like. So we have a really good idea of what a global flood would look like, and we don't find anything in the geologic column that looks anything close to that.
Right. And see, I swear, I was gonna say something, but I must have forgot what I was gonna say. So I would say that there, as I already said, that there's different types of evidence. And also, I've actually taken multiple philosophy classes, and one of them we actually learned about metaphysics. And there's questions like, what's the meaning of life? What's love? And one of the questions on my paper was, does God exist? So that's purely metaphysical.
Yeah.
And so I would say that simply because we can't empirically prove like metaphysical questions in a science lab does not mean that we're going to call them fake either.
Well, the other thing, if we're talking about stuff like that, some of that is so vague. Like I've heard someone give the example of, like, you know, you could go to some like Polynesian island that, you know, modern civilization hasn't really touched yet.
Okay.
They'll point to like a tiki totem on the beach and say, that's my god. Well, okay, at that point, I believe that thing exists. I don't think it has any sort of magic powers or anything, but if they're saying that's my god, okay, fine, whatever. That thing exists, and if you choose to worship it, that's.
I mean, and also, like, people, like, it is certainly possible for somebody's, like, assertions to falter in many ways, and the Quran says, and they take aside gods which create nothing, and so I think that's a perfect example of, you said about that tiki thing or whatever it is. Yeah, and so
I mean, I would say so far every god that anyone has ever proposed to me has created nothing. Because again, this is all, you know, this can all be tested.
So do you believe that if at one point or another you are ever, like, shown a convincing argument for the existence of the Abrahamic God, do you think you'd then come back to believe in it, or?
I would come back to believe in it. I wouldn't worship it. Because I mean, if I'm shown convincing, irrefutable evidence that thing exists, I have no choice but to believe that.
And also,
given the character of the Abrahamic God in all three of the Abrahamic religions, that dude's a freaking monster. I'd never worship that thing.
And also, you had to have heard of Richard Dawkins, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Richard Dawkins, even he himself said that if at one point or another even he's given evidence, boom, he's ready to both join a religion and believe in God.
Oh, I'd be ready to believe in God. This is where Richard and I differ. You know, just because I'm shown that the thing is real doesn't mean I would join a religion or worship it.
Yeah, I mean, I am proud of him for at least making that rational, like, assertion. That's good of him to make, even though he and I visibly disagree on lots of stuff.
I'm more of a, well, given what Richard's been doing, and especially tweeting over the last 10 or 15 years, I can't say I'm a fan of his. Yeah. But I appreciate the contributions he's made to the fields of genetics and evolution.
But I guess now
more than I appreciate the atheism.
And also, one message I like to send to people that still look up to him. He actually said this like live in an audience. So he said that even if God himself appeared to him, he was just dismissed as a hallucination. And he says not one single thing God could do to him to at least affirm he exists. He said that to an audience.
That is a problem. That is an issue with
that's
that.
A huge issue.
That's an issue with that, because, you know, when you think about it, I don't know what would count for good evidence of a God, because anything like that you could show me, it is more likely that is aliens doing that than a God.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he says. So he said that, like, even if God appeared to him, like, in the face, he still would maintain his atheist position, which even goes against science, and he even admitted that too.
No, that doesn't go against science, because what Dawkins was essentially saying there is, if I had this experience, I'd want to test it. I'd want to test it and verify that what I saw was that it was actually real, or that I actually have all the facts on it.
Yeah.
That is what should happen with something like that. Because
do you believe that, like, I should be taken to a lab and verify if I'm real?
No. I'm saying that if you have had experience with what you think is a supernatural,
right,
I think you should test those experiences.
Okay.
Or find someone who's, if you can't test them, find someone who's better qualified.
Well, as I said earlier, so God's like a metaphysical question, and so I would say that, like, I interpret it as bizarre to try to verify, like, the metaphysical claim itself in a lab. Aspects, I'm open to measuring those aspects, but
again, going back to what I was saying of, like, if you having, like, a spiritual experience, it's more likely that it's aliens messing with you than it's a God. like you would have to consider that. If you're being intellectually honest, you would have to consider that possibility. Because, well, think about it. Gods and the supernatural, that is something that we have no knowledge of. We have no knowledge because nothing has ever been confirmed. But as far as aliens go, we know that biological life can exist because it exists here.
Yeah.
So therefore, it is at least possible that it exists somewhere else.
Okay, so I actually investigated that before, and so scientists have confirmed that like the aliens you see in like Star Wars and all these other movies do not exist, but they're talking about like microorganisms that might live on Mars or even elsewhere in the universe.
Well,
that's what they're referring to.
Well, going beyond that, and this is going back 10 or 15 years. I was still in Penn State at this point.
Okay.
When I was there, one of the things we discussed in one of my classes was how astronomers had recently verified the existence of a planet with an Earth-like atmosphere.
Okay.
Which means that there is life on that planet.
Okay.
Because the only reason our planet got the atmosphere that it did is because of plant life.
Yeah.
Before plants came out of the ocean, you would not be able to breathe the air here. It'd be toxic. It'd be a lot of carbon dioxide, some carbon monoxide, sulfur gases. But yeah, the fact that there is a planet with an Earth-like atmosphere means that it probably has something on it very similar to plant life.
Yeah.
Now, if we're talking about intelligence, that's a whole other. I have said many times before, there has to be other life out in the universe.
Okay.
I think it's statistically impossible. I think it's statistically impossible that there isn't. Now, whether any of that life is intelligent is an entirely other question.
Okay. And
most likely, if we're getting like animal life, something like insects would be the most likely thing.
Yeah. I mean, which is why. Which is why I've heard like the Kalam cosmological argument and the fine-tuning argument be brought up because those go go back 1,000 years.
The fine-tuning argument, first of all, is bullshit. Because the fine-tuning argument does it backwards. The fine-tuning argument sees that we're here, we can exist in this environment, therefore this environment was created for us. And no, it's the other way around. Life adapted to the environment that it's in.
Yeah, so I think I've made this comparison before in another discussion I was in. So let's say like you're trying to throw like a ball from like a really far away point, and you have to like aim it so carefully. If your arm like twitches, then you'll not make it like it. So and also like scientists have verified that like the possibility of us being here right now is like insanely like one in like one, like a lot of zeros.
It's very very small.
Yeah.
But if things were a little different, there would be other life here instead of us. The fact that we're what's here. Yeah, it was statistically unlikely. Having human level intelligence evolve was a bit of a long shot because in terms of the calories we consume, the brain is a very very expensive organ to run.
Okay.
So if we're talking an environment. Again, Americans aren't used to this because this is an environment of plenty. We're not there's no one at Pumpkin Fest right now who is worried about where their next meal is going to come from. If anything, they're worried about getting too fat. But you dial the clock back to like when we were when humans were first evolving, when we were sort of proto-hominids out on the African savannah. You had no idea when or where your next meal was going to come from. Starvation was very common. Also, being mauled by leopards was a thing back then.
Okay.
So, in order to justify the amount of calories that you would be burning simply by having this organ in your skull, that organ better be doing something really good for you. That better be an advantage.
That's and so I guess like the reason why they bring that up is because like the numbers I just told you about, like 1 to like 1 and like lots of zeros, and I guess like that was their starting point for that argument.
Well, and also when you consider, I think it was like something like 10 or 14,000 years ago, human beings went through a severe bottleneck. I think there were less than a million. There were less than a million of. There were only there were only a few thousand of us at one point, which. If you know anything about ecology and anything like that, I've been to a zoo where they have a species there that they have labeled as extinct.
Okay.
Now there are still living members of that species there, but I asked about this when I was at the zoo because I didn't understand ecology that well yet. I was like, why are you saying they're extinct when you still got live ones in there? And they said there are less than 50 of them out in the wild.
Okay.
When the population drops that low, there's not enough genetic diversity to sustain these species for more than a few more generations. They are effectively extinct.
Okay.
And humanity, we didn't get as low as 50, but we got low enough to the point where there were a couple thousand of us at one point. I know cheetahs went through something similar.
Okay.
They had it worse. Cheetahs went through such a bottleneck that they are all sort of inbred right now.
Okay.
I mean, even though the population has kind of exploded since then.
Okay.
They're still genetically similar enough that if they need to do organ transplants, they don't need to give the cheetahs anti-rejection drugs. They're all that similar genetically, which is bad for the species because that means one bad disease is going to kill all of them.
Right.
Because you get something like that, and what you're hoping for is that the population is big enough, or there is enough genetic diversity that some of those individuals are either going to be resistant to the disease, or you're going to have a big enough population where a genetic resistance is going to evolve. There are certain humans with a genetic resistance to HIV.
Okay.
What is it? CCR5 Delta 32. I actually remember that. But yeah, it's a mutation on the T cells that prevents the virus from locking in and infecting it.
Okay.
I actually wrote a research paper on this once. That mutation became very prominent among Northern Europeans right around the time of the bubonic plague.
Okay.
So there is some research that could be done in there, wondering if what's the similarity, because if that mutation became prominent there, maybe we can assume that it had a role in resisting the bubonic plague.
Okay.
So if it also resists HIV, is there a similarity, and is there something we can learn from that?
I do hear, I guess, what you're saying here, and so here's actually something I brought here that I thought I'd share.
Okay.
And so as I said earlier, science science deals with the natural world.
Yes.
And miracles are something that pertains to the divine and are understood to be supernatural events that are outside, I guess, of the laws of nature. That's something to remember. But they're not. So just because we can't test something like a scientific phenomenon does not mean that it's fake. So science could be like a study of we got traffic laws and we got engineering. And so I guess
the thing is once miracles start affecting the physical world, then they are testable by science. One of the best phrases I heard about that is, whenever God dips his hand into our universe, he should pull it out dripping with physics.
Yeah. And so my contention next is that simply
So can we at least acknowledge that if miracles happen, they affect the physical world, they are testable by science?
I suppose so. I mean, that's something I could think about later. And
was it the Quran or the Hadith that had the story of Muhammad cracking the moon in half?
Yeah, that's something that was in there.
Yeah. So if that actually happened, that should have been verifiable. People in other parts of the world would have been able to see that.
Yeah, and so
and that has never been recorded anywhere.
And so apparently Muhammad did have like eyewitnesses like in Arabia who were with him who testified sort of like something similar.
Well, the book says that.
No, it's not simply the book.
What I'm saying is that if Muhammad actually cracked the moon in half, people who were not in Arabia, people who were in other parts of the world, like China, or China or Europe, they would be able to see that because we're looking at the same moon.
Okay.
You don't have to be right. You don't have to be right in the group of people that Muhammad is in to see that, and no one saw that.
Yeah.
No one saw that.
So, and also,
So what happened was everyone else conveniently looking away at the same time? Because I don't buy that.
Yeah, and the Quran does say like it says something along the lines of do they not ponder like what's around them, because like the Quran encourages reason and thinking, because Surah 8:22 says, indeed the worst of creatures in the sight of God are those who are those who do not use reason. So we have a clear verse of like encouraging people to use reason right there in front of you, I guess. Yeah, and so okay. So let's see. I'm just let me see what else we could talk about here.
I'm all for people using reason.
Yeah, I mean,
I've just met quite a lot of religious people who don't.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking to you about earlier. One of the reasons why I abandoned Christianity for Islam is because I was like pretty much told, like, do not study what other people believe, like just shut your mind, like literally told me to shut my mind to that. And I'm like, no, this isn't gonna work.
And there are other Christian denominations who would encourage reason just the way that whatever your version of Islam is.
Well, I would just say I'm a Muslim because like Muhammad said not to like divide into sects or whatever, because like he said that actually would be more a bad thing.
And that always seems to happen with religion. Even with Islam, it's still divided into sects. You have the Sunnis, the Shias. I'm not really an expert in Islam, so I don't know what other sects are. Are the Jains a version? Are the Jains a version of Islam?
No, Jains are they're a dharmic religion from India.
Okay.
And I'm just seeing. I don't know if I brought it with me. I'm trying to see if I did, and if not, I'll just try to remember from my own brain here. Okay, so let's see. Actually, here, what else do we got here? A mouthful of scripture and a heart full of hate. I've seen that throughout history, but I would say that we have to be able to separate the extreme from what's actually taught.
Well, there's a book that just came out that I want to at least read it, if not buy it.
Okay.
The guy who wrote it is a comedian and a political commentator. His name's John Fugelsang. The book is titled "The Separation of Church and Hate." Basically. He had a tagline in it saying like, have you ever seen a bunch of these Christian nationalists and had a reaction like, Jesus Christ, these people are nothing like Jesus Christ.
Yes, and so even like the Hadith say that there's a difference between like true believers and hypocrites, and like Muhammad simply said, follow what you're taught and don't add to it, because that's actually a form of bid'ah, which actually contradicts. And
there's something in the Bible about that too. Like don't add to it.
Yeah.
Which, from what I understand, there have been additions made to both the Quran and the Bible after those words were written.
No, I wouldn't say there were any when you say additions to the Quran, what do you think that means?
Again, I'm not so much of an expert, so I can't say that with 100% certainty.
Okay.
I've heard that that after Muhammad wrote the original stuff, like after Muhammad died,
right?
There have been certain edits, and there have been some passages added to it. I know, at least in the Bible, or the New Testament at least, one of the most famous stories from Christianity was actually added in the Middle Ages.
Right.
That is the story of the woman taken in adultery. You know that one?
I've heard of that.
That's where the phrase comes from, where like, the crowd was going to see the crowd had caught this woman being adulterous, whether she was a prostitute or whether like she was, cheating on her husband or whatever, and they were going to stone her to death, and that's where Jesus had that famous saying of, ye among you who is without sin, let him cast the first stone.
Okay.
That story is not in any of the original copies of the Gospels we have from back in like the 3rd century or whatever.
Yeah.
That story only appears in copies of the Gospels from the Middle Ages and later.
Okay. Yeah.
So very clearly that story was added in the Middle Ages.
Right. But the Quran went through lots of evaluation. It went through isnads or chains of revelation. And so if you were to take all the Arabic Qurans in the world and lay them on the table and open them up, every single word passage is still the same. And also there's around 6,200 verses. I guess the one thing, even the Ahmadiyyas agree on 114 chapters, 6,200 verses.
Okay. Even if the Quran was still perfectly preserved from whatever Muhammad's original draft of it was,
right?
That still doesn't mean that there's anything magical or particularly special about it. I would say that all the statements, all the moral teachings, the intellectual teachings, everything in the Quran, they should all be evaluated individually on their own merit. And I'll give you an example. You like philosophy, so you obviously you've heard of Socrates, right?
Of course.
Are you aware that Socrates may have never existed? Socrates may have been a character invented by Plato. So we know that Plato existed, but but outside of the stories about Socrates that Plato wrote, we don't have any evidence that Socrates ever existed. So Socrates may have never been real. He may have just been a character in the books that Plato wrote.
Okay.
But what the moral teachings of Socrates and the Socratic method, all of those things stand on their own merit.
Okay.
So it really doesn't matter whether or not Socrates is real, because the stuff he said in those books has value in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've seen a lot of Christians, and I'm not going to say that Muhammad never existed. We have pretty good records.
Yes.
Now Jesus, that we don't know about. Jesus may not have ever existed. Jesus may have always been a legend.
Okay, I assume you've heard of Bart Ehrman before, right?
Yes.
Even as an atheist, he actually tries to defend him being real.
Yeah, I know. And for as much as I like Bart Ehrman, he can never really defend that one very well.
Yeah, and I do have this like jumbo-sized history textbook. It does talk like one part about Jesus where it said, born 1 AD, left the world in 33.
And they probably have the dates wrong for that one. But anyway, the thing with that, what I've seen a lot of Christians do is they will take the words of Jesus, even when they're bad advice,
right,
and hold them up as good, because to them, it doesn't matter if what he said stands on its own merit. It just matters that Jesus said it. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying the other way. It doesn't matter whether or not Jesus ever actually existed. Was what he said good? And if you look at something like the Sermon on the Mount, there's some good advice, there's some bad advice, and there's some fucking crazy.
Right.
Like like he's got some good advice. He's got some good advice in there about how to treat other people. He's got some bad advice saying take no thought for tomorrow, and he's got some crazy advice like the world's going to end any minute.
Right.
So
yeah.
Like if it's something like that, I'm looking at that like it doesn't matter if this guy was real or not. Was what he said good? And it's like, okay, he said some good things. Let's keep that and maybe get rid of the rest.
Right. Yeah. And so, okay. So, I assume you've heard of the moral argument before, right? Do you want to talk about that next?
Which one?
Moral argument. I'm talking about the moral argument for God. That one. Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have to refine down. It's like moral argument. Maybe I've heard of it. I don't know.
Okay. So I hear atheists all the time say, but we don't need religion to be good. Well, actually, I have really no choice to agree with that. Of course we don't need that. I mean, I've actually had tons of like experiences of good atheists. You included. I mean, we had a really good discussion. But
I was gonna say, I mean, you haven't talked to her. My wife's a better person than I am.
But I would say that at the end of the day, there has to be some form of objectivity, and subjectivity means like something that varies upon humans. For example, because the reason why we can't come to a conclusion of are dogs or cats better is because that varies from each of us. Because some people might say, oh, like cats are cute and they purr, or some might say dogs are a good companion. But the reason why we can't come to a conclusion is because that varies from each of us individually.
I mean, I don't know. I think our cats are awesome.
Yeah, and so for example, like because for example, like we know stealing is bad, we know genocide is evil, and all that stuff.
So by what standard are you measuring that?
Well, I would say that throughout history, we've seen people trying to reinterpret like philosophy and morality. We saw how Hitler tried to brainwash all these Germans into thinking that him murdering the Jews was good, when in fact it wasn't. And I don't care how many people you brainwash into following your ways, that will not make you good. I mean, think about this. Like the Nazis could have won World War II and took over the whole world and brainwashed us.
This is the standard. This is the standard I use for morality. Anything that promotes health, happiness, and well-being, or reduces suffering, or reduces unnecessary suffering,
right?
That we can consider immoral.
Right.
Anything that reduces health, happiness, well-being, or promotes unnecessary suffering, we can consider that immoral. And I think if you start from that standard, you don't need a whole lot of argumentation. I think we can measure moral actions by that. I think that is a good standard to measure moral actions by.
So also, I did formulate an analogy about this in my mind. So imagine we have an indoor pool with 25 meters, like it's 3 feet deep there, 12 feet deep on that side. And so a person might say, I don't need a measuring tool to tell me that the pool is deep. Well, I agree. Of course you don't need no measuring tool, because but the measuring tool gives us an objective number of how deep the pool is, and irrespective of what your opinion on the pool is, it will not change no matter what.
That's like the question. That's like the question of how many molecules of water do you need to consider something to be wet?
Right.
Because one molecule ain't going to do it.
Okay. So I would say that the measuring tool is basically the objective number of the depth. Now, there might be people of varying heights who might have their own personal opinions of the depth, but that does not necessarily change the depth. Now let's say like it's dark near that side of the pool, and we can't really go near it, and we're only on that side of the pool, and we think, oh, that's how deep it actually is. But let's say the lights are fixed and we can now swim there. Then I would say that the depth of the pool might not have changed, but our understanding of the depth of the pool might have altered. Mm-hmm. So I would say that yes, our morality really did form from, I guess, an unseen lawgiver. I guess our understanding of what's bad has changed.
No, it's not. Our morality did not form from an unseen lawgiver. It formed very much from a seen one. It came from us. We decided both, and we do this every day, both individually and as a society, we decided what is moral and immoral. Now, I would argue that a lot of our morals, there is an evolutionary basis for a lot of our morals. There's a biological basis for some of them.
Okay.
We have these things in our brains. They were given the nickname of Gandhi neurons. Okay. And what happens is these things fire when we watch things happen to other people. Like if we see someone else in pain or suffering, these things will fire up, and that is the basis of our empathy, right? Because we can imagine ourselves in that situation.
Yeah.
These are particularly well developed in humans, more so than they are in a lot of other animals.
Yeah, and I would say that I have a huge problem with the idea that our society created morals, because who knows, if that were actually true, then for example, then what's evil one day could very well become good the other day, because I did already make that comparison as to this, for example, that's kind of the problem. What's good or bad comes down to what we say is good or bad, and I think given that, it's important
it's important to have good, well thought out standards, and it's important to be consistent.
Well, let's also not forget that like a collective group of people cannot all agree on the same thing. Like, for example, there's a possibility that one of the people in the group might have a different thought about something one day. And I did already make that analogy as to, like, think about this. Like, Hitler and Hirohito could have won World War II. They could have set up their own interpretation of race and what's good and bad. I mean, I don't care how many people you think you brainwashed. What stands is the Holocaust is evil, no matter what route you go down.
Well, apparently the Nazis didn't think so. I mean, I would say it's evil.
Which is why I think that's a problem.
I would say it's evil because it is in direct violation of what I said my moral standards are. Now, you heard what I said my moral standards are.
So you said there were like if it brings good, joy, and health.
If it promotes health, happiness, or well-being, or if it reduces unnecessary suffering. And I say unnecessary because not all suffering is necessarily bad.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like I might need a tooth pulled, and that's going to hurt at the time, but that's going to save me a lot. That's going to save me a lot of pain, down the road.
Yeah.
So that's why I say unnecessary suffering. But yeah, if it promotes health, happiness, well-being, and if it or if it reduces unnecessary suffering, then we can consider that moral.
Yeah.
If it reduces health, happiness, well-being, or promotes unnecessary suffering, then we can consider that immoral.
Yeah, I would say that's actually pretty good. You said that, and so I would say that there are times where somebody being hurt might actually be good. For example, let's say like if a cop is in a genuine self-defense situation and he deploys his taser, that could be a good thing. And let's say like if somebody is in dire need of severe surgery, surgery does hurt, but at the end of the day, as long as that person is nursed back to health, then I can't really call that evil.
Yeah, and I mean, even let's say that let's say the surgery goes bad and the patient dies. I'm still not saying that was immoral because that was still done in an attempt to save that person's life or make their life better.
Right.
Because at that point that's not really moral because that was an accident.
Yeah.
And when it comes to morality, I think you have to consider intent.
Yes, and I would also say that our understanding of objective morality has evolved, because there was a time, for example, when people thought that non-white, non-Protestant people were less than everybody else, but we don't do that anymore.
Well, just as far as that whole thing of bringing up the idea of at one time people thought slavery was good. Why don't you ask the slaves what they think of that?
Yeah, I mean, of course they would tell you it's bad, and also, again, I don't care how many people you brainwash into thinking that something like killing people is good. At the end of the day, it's still bad.
Even in that situation, the Jews in the concentration camps didn't think that was a good thing.
I mean, you don't even have to be in a concentration camp to think the Holocaust was bad, okay?
No, I'm just saying, like when you said that, the entire society was brainwashed into thinking that, well, not that section of the society.
Right, because
which is why when it's something like that,
yeah.
I think it's good to come to a consensus.
Okay, so I actually have a question. Have you seen The Man in the High Castle?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So basically, it's about where Germany and Japan won World War II. They took over all the world, including the U.S., and they try to brainwash as many people as they can to telling them that the killing of all these people is good. Again, I don't give a crap how many people you brainwash. At the end of the day, still bad. I don't care how many people I don't care how many followers you have. Still bad. You're not going to convince me. That's just what I say about that.
Have you ever seen 1776? Are you familiar with that?
I don't believe so.
It was it was more popular, I guess, back in the 70s when it was written. It was a musical. It was on Broadway for a bit, and it was about the Constitutional Convention leading up to the drafting of the Declaration of Independence. There was a great point in that movie where they were arguing over slavery.
Right.
Because the reason slavery was still a thing after America was founded was because they demanded that the Resolution of Independence be unanimous.
Okay.
And the Southern colonies would have walked out if the Southern colonies would have walked out if they had abolished slavery.
Right.
But when they're having that argument, there's this great exchange between John Adams and the guy from South Carolina.
Right.
Where Adams is, Adams was, referencing the Declaration. He said that little paper there deals with freedom for Americans. And the guy from South Carolina is like, oh, really? Mr. Adams is not calling our black slaves Americans. Are they now? Adams had the best response to that. They're people and they're here. If there's any other requirement, I've never heard of it.
Right. Yeah, and so I would say that, again, practices like bigotry and slavery are good examples, for example, of diving into the deep pool without understanding that it's deep. And I would say that as time elapsed, I would say that we begin to understand that stuff is bad. And I would say that just as like we fix the lights on that side and we can go there now, I would say that the depth of the pool did not change. I would say that the way we understand that has changed. And I would say the same thing to morality. I would say that objectivity has not changed. The way we understand it might have.
I kind of like your analogy of like fixing the lights on that side.
Thanks.
Because this is one of those I've seen a lot of people become better, more moral, and less bigoted once they left religion. Because there is a lot of stuff in religion that justifies bigotry. I hear this from Christians sometimes, where I call them out for being like homophobic or transphobic or something, and their defense is like, oh well, I don't actually hate those people, but it's just it's in the Bible. This is what God commands, and they're basically using God as a shield for their own bigotry.
Yeah, as a Muslim, I hate that too. And also, and also let me say that before Muhammad, like the Quraysh, they mistreated women, they mistreated minorities, but when Muhammad came, he got rid of all that stuff, and he gave women the right to their autonomy, and he even let them become teachers and contributed greatly to the Muslim world. And so, I would say that also.
That's nice, but someone needs to tell other parts of the Muslim world that.
So
I'm thinking Saudi Arabia and Iran.
So have you ever? I assume you had to have heard of ISIS before, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So ISIS, they painted themselves Muslims. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi painted himself as a Muslim, but that is not. So in every way, they go against the faith, because Muhammad warned that there would be a group similar to the Khawarijites who would kill Muslims who disagree with them. They would kill anyone that spoke out against them. But and also Abu Bakr was known to have had a PhD in Islamic studies. But I mean, him having a degree in that does not make him a valid authority, because I mean, like a doctor could have a degree in medicine, but if he uses poison on innocent people, he's not a good authority to follow. And so I would say that the practice of medicine is what's good itself, but some people might have destroyed it. And so I would say that Islam is what's free from flaws. People might have misinterpreted that.
Going back to what I was saying about a lot of Christians using God as like a shield for their own bigotry.
Oh no, we're just having a discussion.
I've seen people when they walked away from religion, suddenly there's no God commanding them to be assholes to be assholes to other people, and they have to confront the fact of like, okay, maybe I was just a bigot. Maybe it wasn't God telling me these things. Maybe it was just me, and maybe I need to grow up. Like my friend there in the Luigi hat.
Right.
He has said before he goes to Pride every year to essentially unfuck his own thinking. Basically, all the bigotry and stuff that he was raised with, he goes there to like get that out of his system.
Right.
Like he was saying, like the first year he was there, and someone like maybe assumed he was gay. He had that like, oh no, I'm in favor of gay rights, but I'm not gay. And then it got to like. I don't care if people think I'm gay. It's like I'm not. Why should it bother me?
Yes, and I would also say that cultural practices which contradict the faith are not valid arguments against it. I would say that Muhammad even warned that there would be people who claim to be Muslim but really aren't, because the Quran says, and when it said to them, believe in what has been revealed, and they say we believe, but they really don't. And so I would say that simply because, like, I've heard stories of pastors claiming that God spoke to him, and I would say that they're just wrong about that. I mean, if you believe that he was speaking to you, telling you to be bad, chances are you are not really, God wasn't really speaking to you in that moment. I would say that I personally believe here, and also let me share my own little testimony. I would say that I personally believe that when I converted to Islam, I actually saw the world in a whole new perspective, in a good way actually. I say that I started to trust people more often. I opened my mind was more open to evidence, more open to debates like we are right now. And I would say, I mean, people have their own testimonies for things, because my testimony from Christianity to Islam, you got yours from theism to non-theism. That's sort of where, I guess that's where I think about all that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like my own testimony, like that, I'm not saying that's evidence. I just, I tell that to other people because it's like, well, that's my story, and maybe other people have a story similar to that, so we can relate. But yeah, like what you were saying with ISIS. Okay, maybe they're misinterpreting everything or whatever, but they are still using whatever their religion is as an excuse to do horrible things.
Which is what I, as a Muslim, condemn all the way. And even Muslim Authority has condemned ISIS as actually being against what it teaches.
I'm just saying take away the religion. They don't have that excuse anymore.
Right. Yeah. I think I have no choice but to agree with you there. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Take away the religion, and they have to confront the fact that, well, I'm doing this because I'm a hateful person, or I'm a bigot, or I like violence, or I hate women, or whatever.
And I have a feeling even the religion would say that same thing to them too. Because I think even if Muhammad were here today and he encountered them, I have a feeling he would say, "Are you really practicing Islam, or are you just using it to justify your own domination of all these innocent people?" I think he would say that to them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, but yeah. Hey, this has been a really, really good discussion. And what was your name?
Nick.
Nick. What a coincidence. I'm Nikolai too.
Okay.
Nice meeting you, sir.
You too.
Yes. Sure. What's your question?
Your name Gronkowski?
Sorry, what?
Is your name Gronkowski?
No.
You sure look like him.
Really?
You know who he is, right?
I don't think so.
You think you look like Rob?
Nah. What's your name?
My name's George.
George. Nice meeting you.
You
Yeah. So
look like Rob Gronkowski.
Okay.
I was gonna say, you might appreciate the one bumper sticker down there.
Which one?
The world is my country.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The world is my country, all mankind are my brethren, and to do good is my religion. I have a feeling that even the Prophet Muhammad would agree with that, because I would say that, yeah, that's because Islam, throughout the Quran and the Hadith, command Muslims to treat people the way they like to be treated.
Yeah. Now,
it abhors lying, it abhors stealing, it abhors killing innocent people.
Now, just to clarify, I'm not saying that being an atheist will make someone a good person.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you.
Because it doesn't. Atheism is a single answer to a single question. Is the answer to the question, do you believe in any gods? That's it. That's it. Now beyond that, my wife and I both identify as secular humanists.
Okay.
And that is essentially moral philosophy. That is,
Gotcha.
because atheism in and of itself, it's neutral. It's not really good or bad. You have to have some kind of ideology or moral framework after.
Right. And also, I even studied Haredi Jews, and one of their principles is Tikkun Olam, which is to make the world a better place than it was when you left it. And so I actually follow these Muslim accounts on Instagram, and so one of them actually talked about how people do things because they actually care about it versus showing off. And so if I, for example, take a picture of myself doing something good, I would not actually be considered moral because of that. And I would say that God will ask us about our intentions on the day of judgment. So he'll point to the three people: the martyr, the do-gooder, and the teacher. And he'll say, nope, you were just doing that because you wanted to be cool. Even they teach that you have to do something because you actually care about good outcomes, not simply for friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever play tight end?
I don't believe so.
You never played tight end?
No.
Well, you would know if you played tight end.
Okay, what is it?
Tight end? It's a football player.
Ah,
Like Rob Gronkowski. You know who Rob Gronkowski is, right?
no.
He's a football player, and he looks like you.
Oh, maybe
He was a
I'll...
football player. Now he's an announcer.
Ah. Yeah.
He does a lot of commercials.
Oh, okay. Yeah.